Some things should never be spoken aloud. I learned that the night my reflections stopped being mine. I hadn't been back to Millbrook in 8 years. Not since I left for college. Not since I swore I'd never set foot in that suffocating little town again. But death has a way of dragging you back to places you thought you'd escaped. The call came on a Tuesday morning. My grandmother was gone. Heart failure, they said. Died in her sleep. Peaceful. That's what everyone kept telling me at the funeral. Peaceful. They didn't know her like I did. My grandmother, Vera Castellano, was not a peaceful woman. She was sharp edges and whispered warnings. A woman who kept the curtains drawn even during the day and spoke in riddles that made your skin crawl. Growing up, I thought she was just eccentric, maybe a little paranoid. The other kids in town called her a witch. Their parents told them to stay away from her house. The old Victorian at the end of Ashwood Lane, where the streetlights never seemed to work quite right. I'd believed them in a way, believed she was just a strange old woman with strange old habits. But I'd never been afraid of her. She was my grandmother. She made me hot chocolate when I couldn't sleep and let me stay up past my bedtime. She loved me. I was sure of that much. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Isn't that always the way? You leave a place, and when you come back, it's like someone shrunk it down while you were gone. The paint was peeling worse than before, and the garden my grandmother had tended so carefully had become a tangle of weeds and overgrown roses. I stood on the sidewalk for a long time before I could make myself walk up the path to the front door. My mother had given me the key at the funeral. She didn't want to come with me to sort through the belongings. She'd never had a good relationship with her mother-in-law. Too many arguments, too many bitter silences over holiday dinners. She told me to take whatever I wanted, sell the rest, and put the house on the market as soon as possible. She said it like she was relieved to be done with it all. Done with my grandmother's memory. The door stuck when I tried to open it, swollen from humidity or disuse. I had to put my shoulder into it, and when it finally gave way, the smell hit me immediately. Old paper, dust, something floral and faintly medicinal that I recognized as my grandmother's perfume. It smelled like childhood, like summers I'd spent in this house while my parents worked. For a moment, I almost turned around, almost got back in my car and drove away. But I didn't. The inside was darker than I expected. All the curtains were drawn, just like always, and the air felt thick and stale. I flipped the light switch by the door, and a dim yellow bulb flickered to life in the hallway. The walls were covered in the same faded floral wallpaper I remembered, and the hardwood floors creaked under my feet as I walked deeper into the house. Everything was exactly as I remembered it, frozen in time. The same furniture, the same paintings, even the same stack of mail on the hall table. It took me 3 days to work up the courage to go into her bedroom. I'd been putting it off, sorting through the kitchen and the living room first, boxing up dishes and books and all the small accumulations of a long life. But I knew what I was really doing. I was avoiding her personal space, the room where she died, the place where she'd kept her secrets. Because my grandmother had secrets. I'd always known that. When I finally opened the bedroom door, I found it was just as dark as the rest of the house. Heavy blackout curtains covered the windows, and the air smelled stale, like it hadn't been disturbed in weeks, maybe months. The bed was made, the covers pulled tight and neat. There was no sign that anyone had died there. No sense of tragedy or finality. It was just a room. I started with the dresser. Old clothes, neatly folded, scarves and handkerchiefs. Nothing unusual. The nightstand held reading glasses, a water glass, a bottle of pills. Normal things. Things that belonged to a normal old woman. I was starting to relax, starting to think that maybe I'd built my grandmother up into something she wasn't. Maybe she'd just been eccentric. Maybe that was all. Then I opened the closet. At first, I didn't see it. The closet was full of hanging dresses and coats, shoes lined up on the floor, boxes stacked on the shelf above. But something made me look closer. Something made me push the dresses aside. And there at the back of the closet, hidden behind everything else, was a small wooden chest. It wasn't locked. The lid opened easily when I pulled on it, and inside I found a leather-bound notebook, its cover cracked and worn with age. The pages were yellow and brittle, covered in my grandmother's handwriting, that spidery, slanting script I'd seen on birthday cards and grocery lists my whole life. But this was different. This was dense, cramped, like she'd been trying to fit as much information as possible onto each page. I sat on the floor of the closet and started to read. The first few pages were dates and observations. Simple notes about the weather, about people in town, about things she'd seen or heard. But as I turned the pages, the entries became stranger. She wrote about trains, about symbols she'd seen carved into trees at the edge of town, about sounds she'd heard at night, footsteps in the house when she was alone, whispers coming from empty rooms. She wrote about something she called the listener. The listener. That name appeared over and over, sometimes underlined, sometimes circled, sometimes written so hard the pen had torn through the paper. She never described what it was, never explained where it came from or what it wanted. She only wrote warnings. Don't say the name, don't invite it in. Don't let it see you. Don't let it know you're curious. The more I read, the more disturbed I became. These weren't the rambling writings of a confused old woman. They were careful, methodical records. She was tracking something, studying it, and she was afraid of it. That much was clear in every line, every desperate warning scrawled in the margins. Near the end of the notebook, I found something that made my stomach drop. A ritual. Instructions written in a clear, steady hand with a note at the top that read, "Only in absolute necessity. The price is too high." The ritual was called the midnight calling. According to my grandmother's notes, it was a way to make contact with the listener, to invite its attention. You had to speak its name 3 times aloud at exactly 2:17 in the morning, standing in front of a window in complete darkness. The window had to be open, or at least not covered. You had to be able to see your reflection in the glass. And then you had to wait. My grandmother had written, "It will come. It always comes. And once it knows you, it never forgets." I should have closed the notebook right there. I should have put it back in the chest, locked the closet, and left that house forever. But I didn't, because beneath the ritual instructions, my grandmother had written one more thing. A name. Just one word, written in letters so small I almost missed them. Cairnwood. I said it out loud without thinking. Just once. Just to hear how it sounded. The moment the word left my lips, I felt something change in the room. The air got colder. The light from the bedroom seemed dimmer. And I swear I heard something shift in the walls, like the house itself had taken a breath. I told myself I was being ridiculous. I told myself it was just my imagination, that I'd been reading too much of my grandmother's paranoid writing, and it was getting into my head. I shoved the notebook into my bag and left the bedroom, left the house, drove back to the motel where I was staying in town. I tried to forget about it. I tried to forget about it. Selling the house, sorting through the estate, getting back to my normal life. But that night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the notebook, about the ritual, about that name. Cairnwood. It didn't sound scary. It sounded almost mundane, like the name of a street or a neighborhood. But my grandmother had been terrified of it. She'd spent years documenting it, warning against it, and in the end, she'd hidden all that research in the back of her closet, like she was afraid someone would find it. At 1:30 in the morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to prove it was nonsense. I was going to perform the ritual, show myself that nothing would happen, and then I could let go of this creeping unease that had been following me since I'd opened that notebook. It was just superstition, old folklore, the kind of thing that scared people 100 years ago but meant nothing now. I got out of bed and walked to the window of my motel room. The curtains were already open, and I could see my reflection in the dark glass, backlit by the lamp on the nightstand. I checked my phone. 2:14, close enough. I turned off the lamp, plunging the room into darkness, and waited for my eyes to adjust. In the dark, my reflection was just a shadow, a vague shape in the glass. I could see the outline of my head, my shoulders, the shape of my body, but no details, no features, just a silhouette. At exactly 2:17, I spoke the name Cairnwood. My voice sounded too loud in the quiet room. Cairnwood. The second time, I felt my heart start to race. This was stupid. I was standing in a dark motel room, talking to a window like a crazy person. Cairnwood. The third time, my voice cracked a little, and then I waited. Nothing happened. I stood there for 5 minutes, staring at my reflection in the window, feeling foolish and relieved in equal measure. Of course, nothing had happened. It was just a story, just my grandmother's paranoid fantasy. I turned the lamp back on, got back into bed, and eventually fell into an uneasy sleep. I should have noticed it that night. The wrongness, the way my reflection had moved in the glass. But I was tired, and I convinced myself I hadn't seen anything unusual. I convinced myself everything was fine. The next morning, I went back to my grandmother's house to continue sorting through her things. I'd decided to pack up the notebook and take it with me, maybe donate it to the local historical society or something. It seemed like the kind of thing someone might be interested in. Old folklore, local legends, that sort of thing. I was in the bathroom, washing my hands, when I noticed that for the first time, the mirror above the sink was old, the silver backing starting to deteriorate around the edges. I was looking at my reflection, watching the water run over my hands when I saw it. My reflection. It was smiling, just slightly, just a little upturned at the corners of my mouth. But I wasn't smiling. I was exhausted and stressed and not even close to smiling. I stopped moving, froze completely, and watched as my reflection continued to move, just for a fraction of a second longer than it should have. Watched as it finished whatever motion it had been making before it caught up with me and matched my stillness. The water was still running. My hands were still under the stream, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, because what I had just seen was impossible. I told myself I'd imagined it. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a flaw in the old mirror, my tired brain playing tricks on me. I dried my hands and left the bathroom without looking at the mirror again. But it happened again an hour later. I was passing by a window in the hallway, and I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass. And this time, there was no mistaking it. My reflection turned its head to look at me a full second after I'd already walked past. I saw it out of the corner of my eye, saw it watching me, and when I spun around to look directly at it, it was facing forward again, matching my position exactly. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought I might be sick. I spent the rest of the day avoiding mirrors, avoiding windows, avoiding any reflective surface. I kept my eyes down, focused on the work of packing and sorting, tried to ignore the growing dread in the pit of my stomach. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Reflections didn't move on their own. That wasn't how the world worked. But when I left the house that evening and got into my car, I made the mistake of looking at the rearview mirror. My reflection was staring at me, not looking at the road behind me, not focused on anything in particular. It was staring directly into my eyes with an intensity that made my skin crawl, and it was smiling. Not a friendly smile, not a human smile. Something wrong, something that stretched a little too wide and showed a few too many teeth. I jerked my head away, adjusted the mirror so I couldn't see myself, and drove back to the motel with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. That night, I called my friend Marcus. He's always been the rational one in our friend group, the one who explains away ghost stories and laughs at horror movies. I needed someone to tell me I was losing my mind. I needed someone to give me a logical explanation for what was happening. I told him everything, about the notebook, about the ritual, about the reflections. He listened without interrupting, and when I was done, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "You need to leave that town," he said finally. His voice was serious in a way I'd never heard before. "Right now, tonight. Pack your stuff and drive away and don't look back." "Marcus, come on. You don't actually believe." "I don't know what I believe," he interrupted. "But I know you're scared. I can hear it in your voice. And whatever's happening, whether it's real or you're having some kind of breakdown, you need to get out of there. You need to be around people. Come stay with me for a few days. We'll figure it out." He was right. I knew he was right. But something stopped me from leaving. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was the part of me that still didn't want to believe any of this was real. Or maybe, and this is the part that scares me most, maybe something wanted me to stay. I went to bed that night with all the lights on in the motel room. I turned every mirror and reflective surface to face the wall. I'd closed the curtains. I'd done everything I could to avoid seeing my reflection, but sleep wouldn't come. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the motel. Footsteps in the hallway, a door closing somewhere, the hum of the air conditioning unit. And then, at exactly 2:17 in the morning, I heard breathing. It was coming from the bathroom. Slow, steady breathing, in and out, in and out. The kind of breathing you hear when someone's sleeping. But I was alone. I knew I was alone. I'd locked the door. I'd checked every corner of the room. I got out of bed slowly, quietly, every muscle in my body tensed. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The bathroom door was ajar, just slightly, and the breathing was definitely coming from inside. I pushed the door open. The bathroom was empty. But the mirror I turned to face the wall. It had been moved. It was facing outward again. And in the glass, I could see my reflection standing in the doorway behind me, holding the phone with the light pointing down, except I was pointing the light at the mirror. My reflection was doing something different. And as I stood there, frozen in terror, it slowly raised one finger to its lips, a gesture for silence, a warning, and then it smiled that wrong too wide smile again. I ran. I didn't pack, didn't grab my things, didn't even close the door behind me. I got in my car and drove. I drove for 3 hours straight, putting as much distance between myself and that town as I possibly could, only stopping when I was halfway across the state and the sun was starting to rise. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought that maybe, If I got far enough away, whatever I'd invited in would stay behind. But I was wrong. It's been 4 months since I left Millbrook. 4 months since I performed that ritual, and my reflection still isn't right. It's subtle, most of the time. Small things that other people don't notice. A delay of half a second. An expression that doesn't quite match what I'm feeling. But I notice. I always notice. And sometimes when I'm alone, when I catch my reflection in a window or a mirror when I'm not expecting it, I see it clearly. I see the way it watches me, the way it studies me, like it's learning, like it's waiting. I don't know what I invited in that night. I don't know what the listener is or what it wants. But I know it's not done with me. My grandmother spent years trying to warn against this, trying to protect people from making the same mistake I did. And I didn't listen. I was curious. I spoke the name. I performed the ritual. And now something is living in every reflective surface around me, wearing my face, learning my mannerisms, waiting for the moment when it can step through and take my place. I've tried everything. I've covered every mirror in my apartment. I avoid windows. I don't look at phone screens unless I absolutely have to. But you can't avoid reflections forever. They're everywhere. In puddles, in car windows, in polished floors, in the dark glass of turned-off televisions. And every time I see one, even for just a second, it's there, watching me, smiling. Last week, I started seeing it in other people's eyes. I was talking to a coworker, just normal conversation about a project we were working on, and when I looked directly at her, I saw my reflection in her pupils. And it wasn't matching what I was doing. It was tilted slightly, looking at me from an angle, even though I was facing her straight on. It's getting stronger, or maybe closer. I don't know which is worse. I've gone back to my grandmother's notebook dozens of times, reading and rereading every page, looking for something I missed. Some way to undo what I've done. But there's nothing. She wrote warnings, not solutions. She documented the danger, but she never explained how to escape it. There was one entry near the very end that I keep coming back to. It's dated 3 weeks before she died. All it says is the listener does not take, it replaces. When the mirror finally matches, you're already gone. I don't know what that means. I don't know when the mirror will finally match. But I think I'm running out of time, because every day my reflection looks a little more real, a little more alive, and I look a little more like a reflection, a little more distant, a little more like I'm the one trapped behind the glass, watching the real world through a barrier I can't break. I'm telling you this because I need someone to know. I need someone to understand what happened, not because I think you can help me. I'm past that. But because maybe, just maybe, if you hear this story, you'll remember it. You'll remember not to do what I did. You'll remember that some names should never be spoken, some rituals should never be performed, and some forms of curiosity carry a price you can't afford to pay. My grandmother tried to warn me. She tried to protect me, even in death, by hiding that notebook where I might never find it. But I found it anyway. I read it, and I didn't listen. The worst part is the waiting, not knowing when it's going to happen. When the thing in the mirror is going to become more real than I am. When people will start seeing it instead of me. When I'll finally disappear completely, and no one will even notice the difference. I see it happening already. Sometimes I'll be talking to someone, and they'll look at me strangely, like they're seeing something I'm not seeing, like there's something wrong with me that I can't perceive, and I wonder if they're seeing my reflection, superimposed over my real face. I wonder if the barrier between me and that thing is getting thinner. Yesterday I made a decision. I'm going back to Millbrook, back to my grandmother's house. If there's any chance of finding an answer, it's there. Maybe there's something else in that house, something I missed. Another notebook, another piece of information, something my grandmother left behind that could help me. Or maybe I'm going back because I have nowhere else to go, because I'm tired of running from something that lives in every reflection. Something that's always with me no matter where I am. At least in that house I'll be close to the source, close to where it all began. I'm leaving in the morning. I probably won't come back. One way or another, this ends there. Either I find a way to break whatever connection I've created, or I become one more cautionary tale. One more story about someone who didn't listen to the warnings. One more name in a list of people who spoke the wrong words and paid the price. If you're hearing this, if someone has found this recording or read these words, then I have one last warning for you. One final piece of advice from someone who learned too late. There are things in this world that our grandmothers tried to protect us from. Old knowledge, old names, old rituals that should have stayed buried. They built their warnings on experience, on generations of tragedy and loss, and we, in our arrogance, in our certainty that we know better, that we're smarter, that we're too modern to believe in such things, we ignore them. Don't make my mistake. Don't speak the names. Don't perform your rituals. And whatever you do, if your reflection ever smiles back at you half a second too late, don't wait to see what happens next. Run.